As far as I can remember, I've had NF.
I took her to the pediatrician when she was 9 months old, and the pediatrician just noticed something wasn't right about her palate. 18 months later, we found Bruce Korf, who then said, I think she has NF.
I said, oh man, we've been going for 9 months trying to get a diagnosis. I really appreciate that. And that's when he said, there's no cure. It's certainly something that was not in the cards that we had planned out for our life, and certainly had never hoped for that for her life.
I'd have scans every 6 months to monitor my tumors, and I'd have doctor visits, but that was really about it.
For the first 16 years of her life, we watched as the tumors grew, and there was nothing really we could do. It was heartbreaking.
I joined the selumetinib clinical trial in 2016. Being told you have this uncurable, nasty disease your entire life, and then suddenly being told that you're beating it. I can't even describe the feeling I had. I just remember crying.
Lillian is phenomenal.
She sets no limits to what she should be able to accomplish. She is a fighter, and she is a positive influence on us and her brothers and everybody around her.
My whole motivation is not letting NF define who I can be and who I want to be as a person. And if there are things that NF stops me from doing, I just move on. I say, okay, it's one little thing. Look at all the things I can do. So I've been involved with the Children's Treatment Foundation for a very long time.
The more we got to know about the foundation, the more we wanted to get involved with it. Cupid's Undue Run in Orlando alone has raised over $500,000.
We've been to walks, we've been to forums, we've done Racing for Research, we've done Cupids, everything you could think of.
We knew we could have an impact, we knew there was hope, and we got involved.
I am going to be the 2021 National Ambassador for the Children's Tumor Foundation, and I couldn't be more excited to be that example for every individual and show them NF doesn't have to be this horrible thing. We're all strong and fighters, and we can do anything we put our minds to.
Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for being here, especially those sticking with us for the second year of the virtual NF conference. I am Tracy Rose, Director of Patient Engagement at CTF, and I am so thrilled about this opportunity to facilitate this patient advocate panel. Number one, because we have a message to share, and number two, as I began preparing and thinking about the session and the words mission, moment, and impact, it occurred to me that I'm part of a force, the Children's Tumor Foundation force, led by Annette Backer. I say force because CTF, on its mission to end NF, has been uniquely able to bring the majority of the NF clinic, research, and scientific community together, not just for the NF conference, but our fearless leader works tirelessly with her team to get the NF community collaborating and sharing with the common goal of accelerating treatments for NF. Along with that journey, CTF brings other partners, pharmaceutical companies, regulators, rare disease community, and stakeholders in the global community. And at some point 4 years ago, CTF realized that if we're developing treatments and cure to meet the needs of the patient, then those needs should be clearly understood. And let's figure out, how about the patients? How are the patients going to communicate those needs to the scientific community? And that was when the force became a collision, bridging the gap between patients as subjects in research and patients as partners co-creating. The patient engagement program was born, and CTF became a connector. Now, patients work with researchers, clinicians, industry, CTF programs, and regulators on various research projects. We train patients to understand research and drug development and empower them to participate meaningfully. Patients need to have a voice, and be partners in research and drug development. Because scientists and researchers don't always know what the other side is experiencing. And so for the next 25 minutes, I would like to focus on the purpose of our mission, the patients. I am honored that we have 4 distinguished patients this afternoon to share their diverse NF journey from diagnosis to present, their perspective and gratitude for how you, the research and clinical community, have impacted their lives and what their hopes are for the future. I had the pleasure of working with Bill Ryder, a schwannomatosis patient, Cole Harrell, NF2 patient, Lillian Brooks, NF1 patient, and Alwyn Diaz, NF1, who will share their stories, and at the end, we'll answer questions from the audience. So please write your questions in the chat. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Bill. Bill, over to you.
Okay, I'm not seeing myself on the screen. Hi, thank you, Trace Ann. My name is Bill Ryder. I am a 66-year-old schwannomatosis patient and the father of a patient. I am so pleased to be here to welcome you to the 2021 Virtual NF Conference on behalf of the schwannomatosis community. We appreciate you working to make our lives and future generations' lives better. I want to start by saying each schwannomatosis patient's journey and experience is unique. Here is mine. I always had pain from the time I was a teenager. At the age of 23 in 1977, I had my first tumor removed from my hip. It was sending sharp electric pains down my leg if bumped or touched. The pathologist just said it was benign. For the next 25 years, I had serious and progressive pain, primarily in my spine and legs. I would go to the doctor 4 or 5 times a year, be given a TENS unit, told to exercise, wear a back brace, or given a random script. In 25 years, not a single scan was ordered. I had several other tumors removed over the years. When my arm went numb, surgery was ordered for carpal tunnel. I declined and changed primary care doctors at 48. I had been with my new doctor only 2 months when I lost sensation from the neck down while on a jet ski. She ordered a cervical MRI and it showed tumor between each disc. A full body MRI then showed the same throughout the entire spine with random tumors elsewhere. I had found the source of lifelong pain. I had a form of NF. Now the process to find which one. It seemed schwannomatosis was most likely. I had part 1 of the criteria for diagnosis, the scans. With research, I found Dr. Mia McCollum of Mass General and was able to get a quick appointment. She needed a confirming tumor. I was able to find a 25-year-old slice of the 1977 tumor in a hospital tumor bank and had it sent to her. Confirmation schwannomatosis. Now my doctors in Cleveland started prescribing for pain, and due to the tumor mass in my body, declared me disabled. I was on 11 different medications. My family and business life crumbled. I was on oxycodone, ever-escalating fentanyl patches, and Ambien to sleep for more than a decade. I was on the highest dose of fentanyl made, 100 micrograms per hour. Even with that, I was never below a level 5 pain threshold on a scale of 1 to 10. In October of 2018, the State Pharmacy Board red flagged 2 of my doctors for overprescribing me medication. They decided to remove all of my opioids with no replacement plan. I was fortunate to have a close friend, Richard Horvitz, former CTF chairman and now chairman emeritus, who was able to get me an emergency appointment at Johns Hopkins. 2 weeks later, I was sitting with Shannon Langmead, Dr. Jashri Blakely, and Dr. Alan Bellsberg. We had a new full body MRI done that morning. We discussed a treatment plan. The new medication I would ramp up when my step down of opioids was complete. A simple drug called gabapentin, 600 milligrams 3 times a day. I went home and completed the step down of opioids on December 27th. On the night of December 27th, I took the first 300 milligram of gabapentin. For the first time at the age of 63, after 40 years of pain, I was pain-free for 1 hour. And I'm not ashamed to admit I was in tears and still get choked up today. We ramped up the pills to 600 milligrams 3 times a day, solved another medical problem the opioids had covered up, and I have been virtually pain-free since. We've had to up the dose once since, but the team at Johns Hopkins NF Clinic gave me my life back. Remember, schwannomatosis patients are all different. What works for me may not work for others. The important thing to remember is to find better ways to identify us earlier and to continue to work toward better and proper use of existing and new treatments. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for listening. And I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Lillian Brooks.
Thank you so much, Bill, and you are such an inspiration to me as well. Well, everyone, I am Lillian Brooks, and I have the honor as serving for the 2021 Children's Tumor Foundation National Ambassador. Throughout this year, I've been a voice for those with NF, and today I want to tell you my story. So I was diagnosed very young, and my parents didn't even know what NF was. I was diagnosed at 18 months old after a pediatrician noticed some asymmetrical elements in my tongue and some discoloration on my chest and ordered an MRI. And there was a peanut-sized tumor on my spine. My parents traveled all over the country asking doctors what it was, and no one knew. There were doctors that just said, let's just cut it out. There were doctors that said, I think it'll be fine. We didn't know what to do. And if we had listened to some of those doctors, I might not be standing here today. So finally, we found Dr. Bruce Korf, and he was the one that said, I think she may have NF. And my dad gets choked up telling this story every time because as someone that never heard of NF, he asked, okay, what's the prescription? What can you do to cure it? And he was told that there is no cure. So NF has always been my life. There was never a point where I didn't know that I had NF. And my parents raised me to have a positive mindset and to work towards a cure. And I think that positive mindset has really set me up for life. You know, I have tumors on my spine, in my neck, in my chest, in my upper right arm. And it causes me pain in my back if I exert myself too far. And I can't walk long distances. And I can't do a lot of things that other kids my age would do. But, you know, I feel like I'm thriving. You know, I'm a university college student right now, and I'll graduate in 2 years, which is really exciting. And in 2016, I had the amazing opportunity that I'm forever grateful for to join a clinical trial up in National Institutes of Health, where we went in not knowing what would happen, and I came out with shrinkage. And from the moment I heard that I had shrinkage, I just remember crying, because my whole life it's no cure, no treatment, no cure, no treatment. You hear that like a record. And then finally hearing that you have shrinkage is just incredible. And I can never have the words to describe what that feeling did to me. So I also want to thank all of the doctors and all of the researchers that are working effortlessly to find us a cure. And I believe that that cure will happen very soon. So thank you to all of the doctors and all of the advocates and all of the researchers that pour in their time to finding a cure for NF. And I want to tell everyone that has NF that it does not have to stop you and it does not have to define you. And we can get through this together. We can support one another and we can achieve greatness. So thank you for letting me talk to you. I would like to pass it on to Cole Harrell.
Thank you, Lillian. Hi, everyone. My name is Cole Harrell, and I have NF2. I was diagnosed when I was 13 to 14 years old, and I am now 27. The first symptom that led to my diagnosis was profound hearing loss in one ear. The hearing loss led to the MRI, and the MRI led to the official diagnosis. Obviously, it was an emotional time, but I was still a healthy teenager, and the only symptom impacting me was some hearing loss in one ear. I was a swimmer growing up, and I remember I was supposed to have swim practice right after that appointment. After me and my parents hugged, I told them I wanted to go practice. I mean, at the time, this wasn't really affecting me, right? So like a normal teenager boy, I was just thinking, do I really have to deal with this right now? My parents probably thought I was crazy at the time. I needed brain surgery as soon as possible, which ended up being about a month later. That surgery left me deaf in one ear, which we were expecting. But even then, I still had good hearing in my other ears, so NF still wasn't impacting me very much. By early in college, my hearing had gotten worse, and I needed a cochlear implant. And then at that time, it starts hitting me a bit more that this disease is causing some changes. Next thing you know, it's summer between sophomore and junior year in college, and I need 2 more brain surgeries. And we knew that one of these surgeries was going to cause me to lose what hearing I had left. For me, one of the biggest impacts from NF was losing my hearing. I think I was very fortunate early on to have doctors explain to me the reality of most likely losing my hearing. They even told me it would be a good idea to learn sign language just in case that happened. And fortunately, my high school sweetheart, who is now my wife, was able to share this journey with me. And we actually ended up being able to take and learn sign language together during college. And on that note, I would really love to see more trials and interested in developing hearing devices to help restore hearing in NF2 patients. I mean, we are all desperately hoping for a cure, and at the same time, we have no idea what a cure will look like or when it will be. And in my opinion, next best issue to tackle is what can be done to improve my day-to-day impacts from NF2. Being able to communicate in ASL, even if not fluently, was one of, if not the most beneficial parts of going from hearing to deaf. And even though I could talk about this for days, I don't want to spend too much time on it. So please reach out to me if anyone is interested in asking questions or talking about that. And by the time I finished college, I had 3 brain surgeries, became deaf, no longer had functioning balance nerves, was left with some facial paralysis, had chemotherapy, had radiation, and a bunch of other minor surgeries. So I feel like I took the whole ride through a very short period of time. But due to some great doctors and some hard praying, everything has been stable for the past 5 to 6 years. And I also just want to take a moment to share why I think it is important to see an NF specialist, or at least a doctor knowledgeable about NF if you are able. I wanted a doctor who is involved with NF drug treatments, who knows about NF trials, who knows about CTF and other resources in the NF community, who really has that library of knowledge from interacting with other NF patients. My wife and I were actually at an NF forum years ago and heard Dr. Plotkin speak, and we ended up being able to transition to him as my doctor. And it was one of the best decisions I had ever made in my NF journey. And there tends to be a lot of decisions in that type of journey. I feel like one of the most important reasons to have an NF specialist is that you tend to get that care that is more fine-tuned towards NF. And it was even more important when my wife and I decided to start our family. We felt it was extremely important that we had all the information possible before we decided how we wanted to have children. Dr. Plotkin was able to put us in touch with a geneticist knowledgeable about NF, and then the question became, what are our options, and what are the risks and benefits of each option? And this is an extremely personal decision for an NF patient to make with their loved one or whoever it may be. But at the same time, I strongly encourage anyone to see someone knowledgeable about NF and get as much information as possible before making a decision. Through that process, my wife and I were given the greatest blessing in our lives, and that's our 18-month-old daughter, Harper. And we can't thank our NF doctors enough for helping us through that time in our lives. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll go ahead and pass it off to Alwyn.
Thanks a lot, Cole, and congratulations. And I have to say, it's an honor to just be on the panel with all of you, and I have a great deal of gratitude to CTF and Trace Ann for just allowing us to have this platform. My name is Alwyn Diaz. I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old when my parents and doctor found a marble-sized tumor on my back, and that then led to me being diagnosed with NF1. I'm currently in my mid-40s, and as I was growing up, the only real treatment to my condition was surgery. So by the time I was in high school, I must have had about 10 surgeries just to remove tumors from either my spine, my chest, my leg, my arm. And the level of pain from a day-to-day perspective was, 5 to 8 on any given day. And it's still that. That hasn't really changed. The issues that I dealt with, was everything from pain and discomfort to, needing to go to hospitals and doctors quite frequently. But I think the most difficult piece was the mental health aspect of it, as well as the socialization. Being a kid, you don't want to be different. And being a person of color and growing up in a neighborhood that didn't have much diversity in it, being a person of color, having NF made my rare condition even more rare. So there are other social aspects that played a component in this experience. And if it's the one thing that I would want more attention towards would be, in fact, how does diversity, equity, and inclusion play a role in individuals with this condition, as well as what are the mental health components that play a role as well. Fortunately, though, let me step back. In around 2015, I met my now wife, and around that same time, I had a slip and fall, which rendered me paralyzed from the chest down, and it was due to an unidentified tumor that was impacting my spine. In that time, I did go paralyzed from the chest down, and thankfully, with the NF Center with NYU Langone in New York City, as well as with CTF, I received the right treatment. I was connected to the right specialist, and now I'm able to walk again. And with the individuals that I work with the specialists, with the NF clinics, as well as with CTF, I'm also happy to share, along with Cole, that my wife and I had our child this past March, and he doesn't have NF. So, again, similar to what Cole said, it's a very personal decision to make. But I don't think I could have ever made it if it wasn't for the knowledge given to me and my wife, knowing that there is a way around this and there's options that you can have. Whereas before, in my 20s, I didn't have any options. It was very limited. And now being able to have those options, I'm happy to say that we were able to bring our son Alex into this life. So I would just, if it's the one thing I can leave everybody with, is having this condition isn't a hindrance to everything. It's understanding how to navigate it and how to lean on organizations like CTF, the NF clinics, and the various specialists that you can get connected to if you're not, so that you can truly live a quality of life and own the life that you have. With that, I'll pass it over to Trace Ann, and thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Alwyn, and thank you each of you for sharing your very personal stories with us. Such great stories of resilience and courage. I do really admire your courage, and I'd just like to pose some questions to you from the chat. Okay, so this is a question for Bill. How was your child diagnosed? It is for me the most difficult part of my disease to imagine that one of my daughter could have inherited my schwannomatosis. I feel responsible, not guilty, but so sad. I didn't know I had schwannomatosis when I had my children. Bill, if you could keep the response to a minute or so, please.
I was in the same situation you were. I was diagnosed later in life at 48. I already had 4 sons, watched them carefully, and one of the 4 was diagnosed with schwannomatosis with both scans and tumor confirmation. And I had that heartfelt talk with all my children that I was very fearful I'd pass something to them. I apologized, and they just said they didn't know, that I didn't know, that whatever would be, would be. And that's why, you know, at 66, my die is cast. I look to all of you researchers, medical community, to find answers for all of us, NF1, NF2, schwannomatosis, so future generations and younger people can face a better future, an easier future.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. I have another question here. Okay. As a health professional, how best can we support your mental health in NF? Alwyn, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The best, I mean, the onus is on us in order to identify the fact that, you know, we don't have to feel a level of depression, anxiety, and sadness for the majority of our days. But the first piece, I didn't know that that was the case. I needed to understand that that was not the norm to feel sad. I think it would have been helpful if my doctors early on would have been more holistic in understanding NF, that it isn't just a physiological condition, but it also is one that impacts mental health. So if the thought was introduced while I was having these feelings and thoughts, and, you know, in different ways that it came out, I would have wished that I would have known that early on so I could have addressed it at that point.
Okay, thank you, Alwyn, and thanks to the audience for the questions. I have another question here. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about patient centricity, and this one is very dear to me as well, and I also have a follow-on question. It would be interesting to hear from the panel how they would see patient centricity, meaning how would you want to be involved in research and the development of treatments? I know, Lillian, you were on a clinical trial yourself. Maybe you and Cole could take this one?
Sure,
Lillian, you can go first, yeah.
Yeah, I could take it. I would say I would love to have like more, I guess, insight into what is being done. You know, like maybe like a research update every now and then or something, like telling us like, oh, like what's happening in the research realm. But obviously, like I'm very, I guess, in it right now because I get updates from my own clinical trial, and now that medication has been approved by the FDA, it's known as Koselugo now. And I think that researchers do an excellent job at like really working hard to get that to patients and opening up opportunities. I guess just like more like from other trials and everything, like knowing what's going on would be great.
Perfect, thank you. We'll do that. Cole, over to you.
So first off, I want to say I think it's very important for treatments, trials, anything we're researching to have a very strong patient-oriented goal. And I know I've worked with CTF on this in the past, where when patients get involved, you really, really get things fine-tuned to what's impacting NF patients. And we're talking about a cure, and that's great, but it's like saying, well, what's affecting us today? What's affecting an NF2 patient? What's affecting an NF1 patient? And even between NF2 patients, all these things can be different. It can be hearing loss, it could be pain, it could be leg weakness, it could be anything, or it can be apps to help us more accessible in day-to-day life. And really being an advocate, getting patients involved, reaching out to patients, and getting everyone really saying, okay, here's what's affecting me. Let's try and look for a trial to help with that. Let's look for research into that. That's the biggest issue that I think we need to tackle.
Wonderful, thank you, Cole. So we have 2 minutes, and I'd like to ask 2 questions to both Bill and Alwyn. Alwyn, I know that you were involved in the very initial stages of me setting up this patient engagement program. You're involved in our clinical care advisory board. Bill, you've had a heck of a year with us, being involved in different research projects, working on schwannomatosis pain scales, design of clinical trials. And so my question for both of you is, how valuable has it been to become involved as an NF advocate and working with researchers to accelerate treatments for NF? And should both patients and researchers continue working together? Bill, maybe do you want to go?
Yeah, I absolutely have so enjoyed the involvement with the researchers. We're able to give them our perspective as far as what's necessary, what we need to have better quality of lives. And, you know, being involved helps give us a purpose. We are helping not only ourselves, but future generations. And if I could just say one thing about something Cole said, it is absolutely critical for NF patients, schwannomatosis patients, to get to major NF centers that have all the resources to give us the right doctors and right treatments. And I'll pass it to Alwyn.
Thanks. You know, similar to what you just said, Bill, I'm so grateful to be a part of CTF and all the work that I'm allowed to be involved with. I truly just see it as an honor. Researchers and doctors and patients should continue, and advocates should continue to working together. We're hitting some really good steam right now in regards to research and advancement, and that's truly due to the partnerships that have been created. My involvement, and the reason why I love being involved, is that, you know, instead of having this condition and letting it rule what I do from a day-to-day, being involved in the different aspects that I get to be involved with CTF or whatnot, is I own the condition. I own where it goes next. I own and support where the advancements continue. And I get to say that my name is a part of that. So not only is it this emotionally gratifying piece, but it also serves as a point for me to encourage others that may be hiding behind their condition to really jump out in front of it and lead their lives in the way that they want to be seen.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. So just to wrap this up, I think we're out of time, but I just want to leave this session extending my gratitude for the tireless and critical part that each of you play and the impact you've had on every NF patient, whether as a clinician, researcher, or, you know, you're developing drugs. But most importantly, I want to leave this session, you know, reminding you that patients are and continue to be partners in research, in helping accelerate treatments for NF, and in helping you prioritize your research. And so you reach out to us, you know, we can be a great connector for you and the patient community. Thank you for listening. And to our panelists, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to continuing working with you. Thank you.
Bye.